You're listening to the Slavic Literature Pod, your shelf help guide to all things Slavic.
I'm Cameron Lalana.
And I am Matt Karasimovich.
And today we're covering Part 1, Chapter 19 of Vasily Grossman's Life and Fate. We're coming off of a letter from Victor Strum's mother to continue on thinking about science, or at least Victor is thinking about science, although in markedly less positive tones this time. Last time we were, hey, isn't it great to be a scientist? And now this time we were, isn't physics just like fascism?
Man, it feels bad to be a scientist.
Yeah. So is there anywhere in particular that you want to start with this part?
Not in particular, just that I kind of forgot about this chapter yesterday when I was drawing that comparison, and I was like, wow, what a great point that I was able to synthesize, not realizing that Grossman does it the chapter after. But still a good point.
Right. Well, it's because you're inside his head. Even if you don't remember the particulars, you already know what his moves are.
Yeah, I'm well versed in Grossman's ways at this point.
Yeah.
I like the quote that you chose for the day. That was kind of one I thought that was kind of tying together our whole conversation from yesterday.
Yeah, basically, if you want our conversation from yesterday in 2 sentences, there it is.
Yeah, it sounded better than our conversation yesterday. Really, it was very pithy and good.
Yeah, Grossman has a way of doing that.
Yes. So, what struck you from the chapter? I feel like I always talk.
That's fair. I think I kind of covered this in our post-it already, so I don't want to go over it too much. But I do think this is a pretty important point. First of all, again, tracking the emergence of Jewish identity. But beyond that, also, Victor makes reference to a conversation with Chapushin, which he had in Stalingrad. I think this is a pretty important one because my interpretation of that conversation is basically Grossman in that novel, or Victor, reaffirming the Soviet project, because Chapushin is like, well, I can't believe the German people have fallen for fascism, but once they realize they've been tricked, they'll return to the people of Goethe, not the people of Hitler. And Victor basically says, hey, no, he kind of chastises his former mentor and says, if we accept that fascism can't change people, the corollary there is that ideology doesn't have the power to change people. And if ideology doesn't have the power to change people, then the Soviet project, based on, maybe Soviet socialist is the wrong word, but at the very least, Soviet ideology, whatever that means for this project, can also not change people. And we are trying to create Homo Sovieticus, the new Soviet man. So we have to accept that you can, in fact, be made a worse person by this. And, it's a reaffirmation of the Soviet project. Here, although, of course, not said directly, in my interpretation of that conversation, by ceding ground to Chapushin's point, he is essentially saying maybe humanity isn't just dough to be molded by ideology. Maybe there's something more essential. And I think you see that in the ways that we talked yesterday about Grossman returning humanity to the people in Nazi ghettos and camps, and that's done not only through returning them their positive individual qualities, but also their negative individual qualities. And so we kind of almost have this like relationship of Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground to Chernyshevsky's What Is to Be Done, where Chernyshevsky's like, hey, what if people are the product of their environment? And then Dostoevsky's like, well, what if I'm just a piece of shit? That's not a product of my environment. And you kind of have like moving.
I did it all on my own.
Right. And so you could read this concession as Grossman being like, maybe, humanity should always be kept as its traits and not reduced to probabilities, not to the probability of, oh, if I do this to the environment, then we'll have this outcome, probably, as he directly attributes to fascism. But if you kind of follow that line of his conversation with Chapushin, you could also similarly apply that criticism of probabilities to the Soviet system, or any system which relies on like large scale, like imposed change. We're like monarchy, Soviet, fascism, liberal democracy, whatever. But these are the two most relevant ones.
I kind of am torn on this depiction of physics in general, and having no knowledge of physics whatsoever, not even a buffoon's level of knowledge. I'll venture forth. They can't stop me. But now I do hate to be a STEM defender here, but I will tread lightly on my STEM defense.
My defense is that physics isn't really like fascism, and that's
Well, I guess I just think it kind of depends on how you view science overall. And I think that what he's critiquing is more of the sort of cult of science, which still definitely completely exists today. And there's something to be learned from this, just as blind worship of science, that it is inherently moving us in this progressive, correct direction. That we're being moved forward at all times by discovery, that it is inherently good. It has some like moral value to it, which I don't know that I agree completely with that all the time. This is, Grossman presents a really compelling counter argument for that in here. Um, but then again, there is a sort of I don't know, right? There's this other side that's just kind of almost learning for learning's sake, or science for science sake, and it kind of is almost its own refutation of this, because if you really look at how far down we've studied, and we still don't have it figured out, right? We've probably uncovered more questions by researching than we have solved. And sure, there may be some scientific laws, but by and large, my understanding is there's quite a lot that we still don't know. And there's probably not going to be a point where we ever know everything. And so in that way, it's sort of, I don't know, it links that human individual freedom with the sort of exploration of sciences. So I think, in conclusion, I think it's okay to still have colleges of arts and sciences. They can be, we can be put together. It's okay. You just have to pay us both the same. I defend you now, you defend my salary later. That's how it works.
Yeah, well, knowing some research scientists, whenever you ask them a question about anything in particular, their answer will always be, well, it depends on these 5 factors. So, and I think that's a great, depending on how you look at it, a great humanist statement, that you can't make those all-encompassing judgments for postmodern science, because it depends on five or 6 or maybe even many more factors in any case.
Yeah, there's people that think that you can kind of understand everything and move everything according to certain laws. They're just as bad whether they're working in the sciences or whether they're working in politics or wherever, right? It's just not a human-centered approach to anything. So we solved it. We've done it. That's life and fate. We'll catch you next year.